I don't want to speak for everyone, but at least for myself, it was like, oh, am I being too sensitive? Like, am I getting too offended too easily? Am I overreacting? Right. And through these books, I'm hoping that anyone who's ever had similar experiences feels seen and understands, no, you weren't overreacting. You were having a very normal reaction to the level of disrespect and harassment that you were having to deal with. Right. It's just been so normalized, but it's not normal.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Authors on Mission. We have a wonderful guest today, NG Avant. She is a wonderful author here of the Capital City series, and she has experienced a life that is similar to the characters in her book, from those marble floors of municipal politics to the written page. NG Avant has crafted a world where journalism graduate Castelda Caldwell navigates corruption, finds her voice, and ultimately discovers what it truly means to have courage in the face of power. On today's podcast, we don't just interview successful authors, we dive deep into the trenches of their experiences, uncover the strategies that transform them from dreamers to storytellers, and discover how they've turned their trials into triumphs. Today, we're exploring not just how to write authentic political thrillers, but how to harness your most challenging experiences and transform them into your greatest strengths. NG Avant is here to expose the truths, build worlds, and show us that sometimes the best fiction comes from the most authentic places. So let's dive in. Welcome, NG. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around, because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. Of course, I'm very happy to be here and to learn a little bit more about your series and what led you to writing the books. So you were also a former government employee who worked in politics yourself before becoming an author. So I'm wondering, first, what inspired you to start writing about your experiences, and how much does this influence the works themselves?
Well, I have a background in journalism, so I did have a background in writing. And what inspired the Capital City series was very much, it came from my own personal experience. So I started working in municipal politics when I was in my mid-20s, and I had a very traumatic experience, if I'm being honest. It was a very toxic environment. And after I'd already left that office, stories started to come out, after the whole Me Too movement.
Mm,
I think survivors started to feel more comfortable talking about their experiences, or at least
right.
calling it out when they're seeing bad behavior type of thing or misconduct. So the catalyst for all of this was there was a news story about a candidate that was trying to get a job working for my former boss. And he just asked really inappropriate questions to her, whether she was willing to go braless to events and stuff like that. Like some pretty wild, when you think about it,
Yeah.
things. And that kind of opened up a can of worms. And I was one of the many women who came forward about her experiences with this particular city councilor. So I went through an integrity commissioner investigation, which is basically at the city level. Whenever there's an issue with misconduct with elected officials, it goes to an integrity commissioner and they complete, like they're a third party, and they complete an investigation. So when I was kind of writing out some of my experiences in an email to the integrity commissioner, things that I hadn't really processed, things that I had kind of hidden away, things that I think my own brain was like, this is so shameful. How could you allow this to happen? Had just kind of pushed it aside. So when I was starting to talk about these experiences through writing, I found it to be very cathartic.
Mm,
And so that's what sparked this idea for the fiction series, Also, what was happening and what ended up happening was the integrity commissioner in this investigation found that this particular city councilor had committed, quote, incomprehensible incidents of harassment towards his staff and towards other young women that were being interviewed for positions in his office. And what ended up happening is he lost pay, but there was no mechanism in place for him to actually get fired. Anyone else in that position would have lost their job, but he got to stay in his position of power. Also, the integrity commissioner sent my testimony to police, and police opened up a criminal investigation into what happened to me. And in the end, they decided not to press charges. So I didn't really get to see any sort of justice. So that's why this fictional series means so much to me, because it was a way of empowering myself, of taking my power back. Like the main character, her name is Callista Caldwell. She is way cooler than I ever was. She does things that I wish I had in similar situations. So it was almost a way for me to be able to retell my own story, even though it's not my story, but the parallels are there, right?
Right.
So it was empowering because it's a three-part series. In the end, there is some semblance of justice. So it provides hope, right? But it's also very realistic of like the barriers that women face working in male-dominated industries.
Definitely. This is just so inspiring to know that you've not only gone through this and, experienced it, but here you are sharing this in the written word, creating a character who's, balancing it also. And I think that it not only is a way to share your experiences, but I think anybody else who might have gone through similar things could find strength from this too. I'm wondering if you found any readers who have come back to you with some positive feedback, maybe influencing their lives in one way or another. I can only imagine that you are able to.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. In my reviews, I've definitely received feedback that it's like it's from the first person. So you're in the character's head. And it's been described as a very emotional read, a very emotional experience. And I think that any woman that's worked in a male-dominated industry probably felt very validated while reading. At least that's my hope, because at the time, I don't want to speak for everyone, but at least for myself, it was like, oh, am I being too sensitive? Like, am I getting too offended too easily? Am I overreacting? Right. And through these books, I'm hoping that anyone who's ever had similar experiences feels seen and understands, no, you weren't overreacting. You were having a very normal reaction to the level of disrespect and harassment that you were having to deal with. Right. It's just been so normalized, but it's not normal. It's not okay. It's not normal. So my hope is that readers who have had similar experiences, or maybe who maybe don't quite understand it, that maybe they feel seen, or maybe they have a better understanding. Like I really want to put a spotlight, like really highlight what the experience is like through
right.
through this series.
And you clearly have done that. So I'm really glad that took the initiative and, now everybody can enjoy it too. Kind of transitioning into the writing process itself, though, you mentioned that you use something called moon journaling. I wonder if you can share a little bit about this ritual, how you discovered it, and how does it connect to your creative voice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a little bit woo-woo, and I started getting into following the moon cycles, and it really helped me with goal setting when it came to actually finishing that first draft of the manuscript. So what I would do is I would say, okay, by the full moon, I want to have up to this chapter written. And then I would treat it like I would, because at the time, it wasn't my full-time gig. Now I'm a full-time indie author. So it makes a lot of sense for me to look at this as a professional. But at the time when I was writing this debut novel, this one here, Consumed in Capital City, it was a passion project. So by using the moon cycle, I was able to, on days when maybe I was really tired, like I had twin babies and a toddler at the time. After they were in bed, there were days where I was just so tired, but because of like being able to tap into the energy of the moon and telling myself, no, I don't want to fail myself. I don't want to abandon myself. I've done plenty of that already. I'm going to sit down and just write 100 words, you know? And then once I got into the flow, I was able to get it done. And that's how I used the moon and the moon cycles to help get me through. And now I still do that. Whenever I'm writing books, I go through a moon ritual on the new moon and the full moon where I think about things I'm grateful for. I think about my goals, what I want to manifest in the long term, what kind of lifestyle I want to lead, and then come up with some goals. Like I chunk it out. What are some goals that will help me obtain this lifestyle, this dream that I'm trying to manifest? And make sure that I can achieve them in like a month, basically, right? A moon cycle is about 28, 29 days. And then I go through and I use tarot cards and oracle cards, divination cards, not to predict the future, what I think is going to happen over the next month, but actually as more of like a process of introspection when I'm looking at these cards and their meanings, like what's jumping out to me, what subconscious things am I not really dealing with? So it's kind of like a process of going through like introspection, like I said, a period of self-awareness so that I can help myself understand where my body is, like how am I feeling? So that I can plan accordingly. Because I'm a Virgo sun and moon, and I'm a Capricorn rising. Like productivity is how I view value, like how I view myself as valuable is, am I being productive? So this has helped me. These moon rituals have helped me like slow down a little bit, kind of gauge what I'm feeling. And on the full moons are all about releasing any gunk that I need to release and keeping me on track to ensure that I reach those goals, like finishing that manuscript in this case. But you can use it for anything, whether like if you have health goals, for example, you want to lose some weight or something, you start building those habits. Okay, well, I'm going to start with a 10-minute walk every day. And then by the time I get to the end of this moon cycle, I'm going to have walked however many steps, you know, like it can be
Right.
used for anything. Tapping into the moon cycles has been a total game changer for me. It's been amazing.
I'm gonna say it is the first time I've heard about that in terms of a writing process. I've definitely heard about moon cycles and tarot, and also, the how do you
Astrology, yeah.
astrology? Oh my goodness, I'm just like messing up that word. But in terms of using it as a writing process, that's incredible. I think today's listeners are going to get a lot of information from that because we're always looking for new strategies and new ways to keep ourselves on track, to keep our creativity flowing. And these are just such beautiful insights. I'm wondering, have you considered writing a how-to guide on using this on this process? Because I think people would really benefit from that.
Absolutely. I actually offer a moon journal. So I took this ritual
Perfect.
and I put it into a moon journal, and you can actually fill it out, and it's for a year's worth of moon cycles. And by the end of it, you can reflect on everything that you've achieved over the past year using the moon cycles. And I mean, that's what works for me. I'm very good at like having deadlines and goals, and
Mhm.
that's what works for me. I think what you have to do, like, is what works for you, you know? Figure that out instead of trying to fit yourself into a box. This is what works for me, and I hope it works for you. If you think it sounds interesting, yeah, check out my moon journal because it has been life-changing for me, and it's made sure that I'm super, super productive and hitting my targets.
Very cool stuff. I like it. And so if people want to get the Moon Journal or, I guess by that matter, obtain the Capital City series, where can we best find those?
If you go to my website, ngavant.ca, you can find it there. Or if you follow me on all the socials, NG Avant author, yeah, on my link tree, you'll find it there. Or basically anywhere that books are sold, ebooks are available, Amazon, Apple, Kobo, like all of that. I should be there. You should find me if you just put in NG Avant.
Well, perfect. We're going to put the links to that in the description box of this podcast today. So anybody listening, when this podcast is over, go ahead and click on over and learn a little bit more about all of that. So thanks for sharing that, Angie. I appreciate it. So one other thing I wanted to ask, it's really clear that everything that you write about and do, it's about using writing as a tool for healing, for empowerment. So I'm wondering if you have any tips about that, about writing and in a way that allows others to feel healed and empowered. What
Yeah,
works for you in that process?
absolutely. Well, I think it feels so good to just get your thoughts out on paper, to write it down. That can be a very healing process for me, as somebody that, my profession was in writing, taking back my story and creating a fictional world where I was in control because I felt so powerless, like I was dealing with very powerful people and also a system that kind of protected the powerful, not the victims in situations. And I mean, I think we still see that today, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was very empowering to write these fictional stories where I got to decide how things end. I was the one in control. I was the one in power because I was the one with the pen, or in my case, with the fingers that were typing. So
Right.
that was incredibly healing for me. But also just the process of journaling is you're getting all of these thoughts instead of spiraling in them or ruminating in them. I know I still can ruminate in, certain situations. Oh, I wish I'd said this or whatever. You can just by taking it out of your head and putting it onto paper, it helps you with the processing. I mean, I'm not a therapist or anything. I don't have a psychology degree, but I have been to a lot of therapy, I'll tell you that. And my therapist definitely um, suggested journaling, and sometimes in sessions would give me like homework and prompts to write things out. Because again, it's a way of like processing your feelings and your emotions.
Of course. So thank you for sharing that. I think this is all things that authors out there, anybody in general, could really benefit from. So thank you for that. So, in addition to having all these tips in the Capital C series and your moon journaling book, you also have a new series launching this Halloween. You told me it was a feminist revenge fantasy that smashes the patriarchy. Sounds incredible. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the new direction.
Oh, I'm very excited about this. So, as you know, I'm into the woo-woo stuff. I love woo-woo stuff, and I think I am a geriatric millennial, as they say. So, I grew up watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and the Craft movie was like really big when I was a teen and stuff. So, I've always had this interest in witchcraft. Also, like Greek mythology. I don't know if everyone goes through a phase where they want to learn everything about Greek and Roman mythology, but I certainly did. So I'm integrating all of these passions into this story. And it's again, it's a way of taking back power. The story basically is that there is a prophecy and there are four young women who are strangers, and they find out that they are part of this prophecy. And on their 27th birthday, which is their golden birthday because they're turning 27 on the 27th of October, their magic is unleashed. And so they go through in the prequel that is coming out on Halloween. That's them discovering that there is this prophecy and that they have this magic, and they meet their familiars. They have animal like guides that help them with learning about their magic and about the prophecy and everything. And they're elemental witches. So there's four of them. So each of them are bound to the four elements: earth, fire, air, and water. And I've taken inspiration. I have three daughters and a niece. So I'm taking inspiration from these young ladies in my life for these four characters. And then they are going to find out that the prophecy is they have to go back in time and stop something from happening, because basically the patriarchy has practically killed Mother Earth. She's on the brink of collapse. And so they need to go back and stop the patriarchy. And they can only travel back during a blue moon. So then I'm going to be fast releasing four elemental books where each of these four young ladies are going to be harnessing their powers leading up to the first actual book of the series where they do the first time jump. And I'm releasing it on the blue moon next year, May 30th or 31st. So that's my plan, and I'm really excited about it. This is going to be the I think this is going to be therapeutic and empowering, but in a different way than the Capital City series, because the Capital City series is very much rooted in reality, right? It's fictional. It's a fictional series, but it's also a reflection of our current society. This next series, the Witchy Women series, is going to be it's going to be fun. It's not as
It's
challenging. I
yeah,
don't
it's
know.
just more fun too, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's
play around with the world a little bit.
yeah, it's magical, and yeah, the Capital City series is it's much more serious.
Right. Definitely. Yeah, so I can see how it's a little bit of a transition for you, but a very exciting one. So I think anybody listening today, if they, are excited about the reading the Capital City series, they'd be even more excited for this new one coming out too. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering if there's any other tips or takeaways that you'd like to leave our audience with today. Anything about the writing process, or perhaps about women's empowerment in general? What's some final thoughts that they should carry on with them throughout their day today?
I would say that only you have your story. So write it. Write your story and don't get caught up in trying to make it perfect. Just get that first manuscript done, get that first draft done. And I think that a lot of us struggle with imposter syndrome. And again, only you have your story to tell. So do it. Get out there and do it. Use your voice. It's okay to use your voice. And once you do use your voice, it's pretty incredible and you won't want to stop.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You got to use that voice. You got to just get it out there, just start writing, right? I appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you. This has been a really fascinating conversation, just going from, your original journalism career to this, to sharing, the truth about the world and in the form of fiction. I think it's wonderful. So thank you for that. And it's been a really great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for this opportunity to chat about something I'm very passionate about, my writing. So thank you. I really appreciate
Sure.
it.
Yeah, yeah. And to anybody listening, again, we're going to have the links to all of NG's books and websites in the description box of this podcast today. So you can go ahead and check it out. And just remember, authors, your experiences, even the difficult ones, especially difficult ones, contain seeds of stories that do need to be told. NG has showed us that with courage, authenticity, and persistence, you can turn your trials into the very thing that connects you with readers around the world. So thank you for joining us today on Authors on Mission podcast. Until next time, keep writing, keep fighting your truth, and remember the world needs a story that only you can tell. We'll see you next time, everybody.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or a leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.